This is a fairly unique video converted into a DVD of the Blackley League Michael Horwich Cup Final, April/May 1990. The two teams are the Bricklayers Arms and the Grey Mare. It was played at Salford City FC ground, which is now a league ground. The score was 5-2 to the Bricklayers. They were generally played on semi-pro grounds. I played on Prestwich Hayes in a final, Mosley, Hyde or Ashton, wherever they could get a pitch basically, but most of the teams were local pub teams. Occasionally you got what we call pot hunters, who were players who were signed at the beginning of the season and miraculously turned up for semi-finals and finals to enhance the team. This is probably as near as you can get to what was considered the Sunday League final. Apart from the number of buttercups and daisies, it's not the best pitch in the world. Now, a lot of these semi-pro teams had full-time groundsmen, and they were definitely the ones I've seen were better than that. But how the times have changed with this one is, this is Salford City, who are run by Scholes, Neville and the rest of the United crew. And now I would think the transformation is quite dramatic. The one thing it has got is floodlights, which was quite a novelty if you played on a pitch with floodlights, to be honest with you. Games tended to be quite physical encounters. There were some quite reasonable players on this pitch, to be honest with you, and the standard of football isn't too bad. But you always got the handbags and you always got the fouls and you always got the, shall we say, colourful language, which sort of went with the territory, really. It is what it is. I mean, it's very fast and frenetic, to be honest with you. But that's what, these games were like. There was the standard of football was this is basically the standard of Sunday League football, but other teams obviously had better players, and like I say, if you had a player you could bring in for the cup final who was a good player, it could probably make the difference between two relatively evenly matched teams. I don't know these two teams, but they were both pretty big footballing pubs. In its era, Sunday League football had probably, there's not many pubs in North Manchester that I can think of, certainly in the Moston Blackley area, that didn't have a football team, or in some cases two football teams. And to subsidise it, or to not just live off subs, which you couldn't do, they used to take name cards around the pubs, they used to have raffles. It was the only way you could actually fund. These are the days before, even clubs are sponsored now, or, certain teams I've known ended up with sponsorships by a benevolent person who went in the pub, or someone who generally done quite well for themselves used to put a bit of money into the team, buy them a kit or whatever, because it's quite an expensive hobby running a football team. And it couldn't really all be subsidised by just people paying a couple of quid a week. Yeah. There's certainly, in comparison to this, if you look at the kits are pretty good. They're all got the same colour kit on, which sometimes it wasn't like that. You just got what was in the bag, and I suppose this is when, the actually sort of upgraded, if you like. A lot of teams didn't have the finance, didn't have the, if you was relying on individuals paying your subs each week, you probably wouldn't have got this standard of kit. Even balls, people used to, if they donated a good standard football, match standard football, that was a big plus, because, there was, nowadays I see kids on the park now, and they have a bag of footballs. You know, we didn't have a bag of footballs. We had 2 balls when we turned up on it. It was a kickabout ball and the match ball, and that was it. You know, they certainly weren't Adidas or Puma or whatever. You know, if you look at the quality of a football now compared to even the ball they're playing with there, which is not bad. Prior to that, you were playing on pitches that were, you know, should we say, questionable surfaces, as we've just seen there. But there's a lot worse than that around. So, you know, if you paid £10-15 for a ball, the chances are, because you were paying on poor services, they wouldn't last long. So, you know, you might go through 4 or 5 footballs in a year, which is quite an expense for a team that's, you know, got no sort of income apart from what was being put in by the players. Original footballs were basically leather with some type of dubbing or coating that you actually physically put on. And then eventually, with the modern technology, they made them out of synthetic material with a coating on the ball. The early ones were obviously not that good, and as soon as the coating came off, they were no different because they were porous, the same as a leather. As soon as the ball became porous, it got misshaped, and then they made these fancy balls with like hexagonal bits in them, and they just went egg-shaped, because as soon as the water got in them, it just totally misshaped them. And obviously as time went on, they got better and better at it, and it was the more you paid for it. And then they started manufacturing them in China and other places. So what you actually end up with was a poorer quality of ball. But if you bought a mitre or something like that, which were, by comparison to some of these other balls, pretty expensive, they tended to last longer, didn't get misshaped, and as they got better and better with the coatings, they were totally water resistant. Generally, the cheaper ball you used for the kickabout, the match ball was generally a Mitre or Adidas or something of that standard. Not many teams could afford 3 or 4 or 5 footballs. I mean, you know, because they were quite an expense for a team that was being run with modest income, should we say. I mean, I've played on pitches at Mathers and several other Drinkwater Park. Anybody who's played Sunday League football will know Drinkwater Park, down the hill at Agecroft. And the canal ran right across it, and same at Mathers, the canal came right across it. So, you know, but teams like that who were subsidised by the company, the kit was never a problem, you know. That was the difference between industrial leagues and Sunday morning leagues. There was no subsidies, no level of income. No, Tootles used to be one of the grounds they used to play the finals on. Tootles was, I've seen quite a lot of games on Tootles. CWS, which is where the archery club is, that was the CWS ground. Manchester boys used to play on there, and a lot of the finals were played up there. They were, you know, industrial pitches with the groundsman well kept in that standard of like this. But I mean, what is surprising, that's a pretty poor pitch really for the standard of the team that played there, you know. But it's the end of the season, so I suppose, you know, they might not have even be bothering with it. The Salford City may have finished their season already. There's a fair crowd there. There's a quite decent turnout for the game. I've only been on the actual ground once, and I've never been on it since it's been upgraded. The Salford City team who were in the league play on that stadium. Moor Lane, yeah. But they must have been in a reasonable league because they've got adverts around the pitch. So they must have been, at this point in time, Salford must have been in a... And if they got floodlights, it's probably maybe North West counties or something like that. I would have thought, if looking at the round the pitch advertising, I would say at semi-pro level, and there's quite a few adverts around there, so I'm assuming that Salford City had quite a few decent sponsors. No, there wasn't sponsorship in the 60s, no. No, later on you started getting a bit of shirt sponsorship. You know, I remember the Thatch had a shirt sponsor. When they probably wouldn't even allow it then, to be honest with you. It was, you know, I don't think it was allowed. The period of time, you know, these games they were generally local companies and businesses or whatever, or the breweries used to, thinking back, it was in the breweries' interest to invest in Sunday League football. So they used to put, you know, 100 quid in at the start of the season, or buy a kit, or, you might get a football with Stones Bitter on it or something like that. They used to, you know, if the rep was, you know, was a bit of a football style guy, and if particularly if you had two teams, if you think of the number of people who go in after a game, players and spectators and whatever, and the interest it created, and even just the general, you know, getting the name of the pub in the paper and stuff like that, it was in their interest to put some sort of sponsorship in. And I do remember that, you know, I think it was Bass Charrington's, Wilson's, they may have, you know, sponsored teams, or they may have put money up or whatever. So that was another source of revenue, that because they were nearly all pub or club based, the breweries were a bit more giving when you know, as it developed, and they thought, hang on a minute, this is virtually free advertising, and also it's Sunday dinner times. Most of these pubs are chock-a-block with the people who are revolving around the Sunday League football teams. So they saw an opportunity, I think, to invest not a lot of money, but any income for an amateur football club was income. And, you know, the ones from like the bigger social clubs obviously benefited, because if they took a raffle round in a social club on a Saturday night, you could make, I don't know, 50 quid maybe. I mean, I played for the Berkshire, and every Saturday the landlord allowed him to take a raffle round, and that was a bit like, you know, the lifeblood, because that was like 40 or 50 quid each week. And he also relied on the managers, the people who were willing to put the time in, apart from the players, because the players weren't interested in taking raffles round and stuff. So if you had somebody like a keen manager or secretary who was willing to go and do that, you know, you were sort of like, you could make a fair bit of money. And I think a lot of it was to do with which brewery owned the pub, and they used to donate stuff for raffles and things like that. So I suppose it was a bit of a community-based thing at the time, which people probably didn't realise. That, you know, it was a little bit of a, you know, if your pub team was doing well, it was, you know, or you had a nucleus of good players went in your pub, and you brought players in from outside. Generally, it sort of enhanced the level of the pubs. I mean, and you had like derby games, you had the Whitegate, the Broadway, the Gardeners. Virtually every other game was a derby game, because nearly every team came from within the local vicinity. A lot of the leagues had a distance where you had to be within a certain boundary or within a distance. The Manchester League was 30 miles from the town hall. Most of the other leagues, Blackley leagues, they were within Blackley, Moston. Not many teams came outside that area. The Middleton League had a bigger catchment area, but even so, they'd only allow teams in from Middleton, Rochdale, North Manchester. So they did have a requirement, and if there was teams applying from, say, Middleton, Langley or Rochdale, they would get priority over the teams from other areas, because the Middleton League wanted to keep a pretty high standard. And one of the things that they didn't want is just teams who were fed up with the league and wanted to move to another league. They wanted teams who were good teams, well run, and had they weren't going to drop out the league after games because they couldn't fund it or they couldn't keep going. So in a way, there could be an air of selectivity, if you like, about who and what team played in what league. There was the Gorton League, was another one around here. Most of the South Manchester leagues played on Sunday afternoon. They were very big leagues. Manchester Publicity League, you would probably be within 10 miles of Manchester to play in it. Although I played in it and the team I played for was from Cheetham Hill. So there was no real boundaries if it came to the point of there was places in the league. If there was places in the league, like the Middleton League, you'd get in. If it wasn't, and it was down to 4 teams, and 3 of them, or whatever, were from the catchment area, they'd get it, and then whichever team they selected from outside would get it. So it wasn't just a case of applying to the league. They did put, I wouldn't call it restrictions, but they did have an ability to be selective in certain leagues. I played in the Sunday afternoon leagues because a friend of mine played for this team, and I played for him for a few games, and then I helped him out and played a season, two or three seasons for him. But that was the Manchester Publicity League, which was exclusively South Manchester. But North Manchester didn't play Sunday afternoons. There was a difference. Most of I think the majority of the Sunday leagues on south side of Manchester played Sunday afternoon, whereas the majority of the North Manchester Sunday teams played on Sunday morning. I've known players play Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon for different teams. They'd turn up, they'd still have the mud from the morning and they put a new kit on and go out and play. But that was the way that, fanaticism of some players and they'd probably played Saturday afternoon as well. So, it was a way of life to some people. They played, if there was a game, they'd play. Said that, some of them may have played semi-pro on a Saturday afternoon, but they certainly wouldn't be making any income out of it, and they still would be working full time. Yeah, they still have to get up on Monday morning and go to work, having played 3 matches of football over the weekend, which I never did it. Not for me, but there was people who literally lived for just playing football. They didn't watch football. The difference was there was a lot of people who used to watch football on a Saturday afternoon, your Cities, Uniteds, your Liverpools, wherever. And there was a lot of people who would just play football. Even though they were football fans of teams, they'd much prefer to play than watch. And there was good footballers who prefer to watch than play on a Saturday. Or they would play Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon or whatever. But it tends to be the better players who played and didn't watch. So, and that's why the standard of Saturday football was pretty far above Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, because the players who played were all pretty much, top classish players who trained, had the facilities to train, and had the ability to play to a high level.